White man, neglecting the rights of a black man, faces the destruction of his career and reputation. The career-ending video lasted only 43 seconds. By sunrise, it had been viewed more than 12 million times. By noon, 3 major clients had suspended their contracts with Whitmore and Cole. By evening, the company's board had called an emergency session. Reporters had gathered beneath the glass tower in downtown Chicago, and the name of its celebrated managing partner, Richard Whitmore, had become a symbol of everything the public despised. In the video, Richard stood in a marble lobby beneath a chandelier worth more than most families' homes. His face was red with anger. His finger was pointed at a black man in a faded maintenance uniform. "You people should be grateful we let you inside buildings like this," Richard said. Then he ordered security to remove the man. What the video did not show was why the black man had refused to leave, what he had tried to protect, or why the documents inside the worn leather folder beneath his arm would destroy Richard's career before the week was over. 3 days earlier, the lobby of Whitmore and Cole had smelled of polished stone, expensive perfume, and rain carried in on wool coats. Outside, a cold March storm pressed against the glass walls of the 48-story building. Water slid down the windows in silver lines. Inside, assistants moved quickly across the floor, their shoes clicking over marble as they prepared for the most important meeting in the firm's history. Whitmore and Cole was about to announce the Riverside Renewal Project, a redevelopment plan worth nearly $2 billion. The project promised new apartments, retail spaces, offices, and a public park along the city's neglected South River district. Newspapers called it visionary. Investors called it historic. Richard Whitmore called it his legacy. At 56, Richard had spent most of his life building a reputation as a brilliant corporate attorney and fearless dealmaker. His silver hair was always perfectly cut. His navy suits were tailored in London. He remembered the names of senators, CEOs, and television anchors, yet often forgot the names of the people who cleaned his office at night. He did not think of himself as cruel. Cruelty, in Richard's mind, required intention. He simply believed that the world had an order. Some people gave instructions. Others followed them. Some sat behind walnut desks. Others carried boxes, repaired lights, or swept the floors after the important people had gone home. Richard believed success proved character. He rarely asked what failure proved. That morning, he stepped from a private elevator and crossed the lobby surrounded by partners, consultants, and 2 city officials. Behind them, a large digital screen displayed an architectural rendering of Riverside Renewal, shining towers, clean sidewalks, smiling families beneath young green trees. Near the security desk stood a black man named Marcus Reed. Marcus was 42, broad-shouldered, quiet, and dressed in gray work pants and a dark blue jacket with the name Southline Facilities stitched over the chest. His hands were rough from years of electrical work, carpentry, and emergency repairs. A narrow scar crossed his right thumb where a metal panel had slipped during an overnight job 6 winters earlier. He held a worn leather folder beneath one arm. In his other hand was a visitor badge that had stopped working 20 minutes ago. "I've already explained," Marcus told the receptionist. "I need to speak with someone from the legal team." The receptionist, a young woman named Emily, glanced uneasily toward the elevators. "Do you have an appointment?" "No. Then you'll need to contact the general office." "I did. Twice yesterday and once this morning." "And what is this regarding?" "The Riverside properties." Emily's expression changed slightly. Not concern. Caution. "What about them?" Marcus looked toward the digital rendering. On the screen, sunlight seemed to pour over a neighborhood that did not yet exist. "There are people living in those buildings," he said. Emily lowered her voice. "Sir, this is a private workplace." "I know. You can't just come in and demand access." "I'm not demanding anything. I'm asking someone to look at these records." The security guard beside her shifted his weight. Marcus noticed the movement. He had seen it before. The small preparation that happened when a black man's persistence began to look like aggression in someone else's eyes. Marcus loosened his grip on the folder. "My name is Marcus Reed," he said calmly. "I'm the maintenance supervisor for 12 apartment buildings on Halston Avenue. 7 of those buildings are included in the Riverside acquisition. We received evacuation notices yesterday." Emily glanced at the folder. "You're a maintenance supervisor?" "Yes." "Then the property owners should contact the firm." "The property owners already signed." Then I'm not sure what you expect us to do. I expect someone to verify whether the tenant's relocation rights were removed legally. The guard looked at him more closely. Emily's mouth tightened. That sounds like a legal question. It is. And you're not an attorney. No. She gave him a polite smile that contained no warmth. Then you should probably let the attorneys handle it. Marcus felt the words land, soft but sharp. He did not raise his voice. He thought of Mrs. Evelyn Brooks in apartment 3C, 78 years old, whose oxygen machine hummed beside her bed. He thought of the Alvarez family on the second floor, with twin boys who had painted stars across their bedroom wall. He thought of his own mother, Lorraine, who had lived in Building 7 for 26 years and kept tomatoes growing in chipped buckets on the fire escape. They had all received the same notice. 72 hours to vacate. No relocation payments. No temporary housing. No hearing. The notice claimed they had waived those rights months earlier. Marcus knew that was false. He had spent the previous night at his kitchen table comparing signatures, repair logs, tenant notices, and copies of documents found inside the property management office. At 2 in the morning, beneath the yellow light over his stove, he discovered that several tenant consent forms carried signatures belonging to people who were dead, hospitalized, or unable to write. His mother's signature was there too. Lorraine Reed had severe arthritis and had not signed her full name in 8 years. Yet on the document, her signature appeared in smooth, elegant cursive. Marcus had photographed everything. He had printed copies. He had come downtown because the bottom of each relocation notice carried the logo of Whitmore and Cole. He looked at Emily again. Please call someone, he said. Anyone involved in the Riverside deal. Before she could answer, the private elevator opened. Richard Whitmore entered the lobby. Conversation changed around him. Backs straightened. Assistants lifted their tablets. A junior associate hurried forward with a coffee. Richard accepted it without looking at her. What's delaying security? He asked. Emily turned. Mr. Whitmore, this gentleman is asking to speak with the legal team. Richard glanced at Marcus. His eyes moved first to the maintenance jacket, then to the worn folder, then to the wet boots that had left faint marks on the marble. We're preparing for a press conference, Richard said. This lobby needs to remain clear. Marcus stepped forward slightly. Mr. Whitmore, my name is Marcus Reed. I work at the Halston Avenue Properties. Richard paused. The Riverside Properties? Yes, sir. Then speak to your employer. I tried. They won't answer. That is not our responsibility. Your firm prepared the notices. Richard looked toward one of the partners beside him. The man gave a small shrug. Marcus opened the folder. There are forged consent forms in the relocation files. For the first time, Richard's attention sharpened. Forged? Yes. Do you have evidence? Marcus held out the top document. Richard did not take it. Instead, he looked at the clock above the security desk. I have a room full of investors waiting upstairs. And there are almost 400 people being forced out of their homes. Richard's expression cooled. You need to be careful with accusations like that. I am being careful. No. You are interrupting a private business event without an appointment, waiving stolen documents, and making claims you are not qualified to evaluate. The documents weren't stolen. How did you obtain them? They were left in an unlocked cabinet inside the maintenance office. So you took confidential files. I copied records that prove people's rights are being ignored. You copied private documents without authorization. Marcus felt the people around them listening now. He could hear the rain tapping against the glass. Somewhere near the elevators, a camera shutter clicked. Members of the press had begun arriving early. Richard lowered his voice. Mr. Reed, I understand that redevelopment creates anxiety. But legal agreements are complicated. What looks suspicious to someone without training may have a perfectly lawful explanation. Marcus held his gaze. My mother did not sign this. Richard looked down at the document, but still did not touch it. And you know that because? Because her hands can barely hold a spoon. A brief silence passed. Then Richard sighed. It was not the sigh of a man moved by another person's pain. It was the sigh of a busy man forced to endure an inconvenience. You are emotionally involved, he said. That makes you unreliable. Marcus's jaw tightened. My mother's condition makes the signature unreliable. Richard turned toward security. Escort him out. Marcus did not move. Read the document. We're finished. Just read the name. Richard stepped closer. Up close, Marcus could smell coffee and cedar cologne. You may be accustomed to giving orders in those buildings, Richard said. But this is my firm. I'm not giving an order. You came into my lobby, disrupted my staff, and implied criminal conduct. I brought you evidence. You brought papers you do not understand. Marcus's voice remained low. I understand that dead tenants cannot sign waivers. The lobby went quiet. Richard's eyes narrowed. What did you say? Marcus removed another page. Samuel Porter died 11 months ago. His signature is dated 6 weeks ago. Gloria Ellis has been in a rehabilitation center since December. Her form says she attended an in-person meeting in January. Anthony Bell cannot read or write, but his form includes a handwritten paragraph giving up his right to relocation assistance. A city official standing behind Richard looked uncomfortable. One of the junior partners whispered, Richard, maybe compliance should review it. Richard turned sharply. We are not delaying a $2 billion transaction because a maintenance worker found papers in a cabinet. There it was. Not Mr. Reed. Not supervisor. Maintenance worker. Marcus felt the familiar pressure inside his chest. The pressure to prove not only that he was right, but that he deserved to be heard at all. He had experienced it in banks, hospitals, schools, and city offices. His calm was treated as submission until he persisted. Then his persistence was treated as danger. Marcus could have shouted. He could have thrown the documents across the marble floor. Instead, he placed the folder on the security desk and opened it carefully. Page 1 is the eviction notice, he said. Page 2 is my mother's medical report showing the damage in her hands. Page 3 is her identification. Page 4 is the waiver your firm claims she signed. Compare them. Richard's face hardened. You need to leave. Compare them. Now. Not until someone accepts these documents. The security guard stepped forward and touched Marcus's elbow. Marcus pulled his arm away. The movement was small, instinctive, and immediately misunderstood. Richard's voice rose. Do not become aggressive. I'm not aggressive. You just resisted security. I asked him not to touch me. You were told to leave. And I told you people are being thrown into the street. Richard looked around and saw the watching faces, the phones, the reporters near the entrance. His embarrassment transformed into anger. You people always think rules should stop when they become inconvenient for you. The sentence hung in the air. Marcus stared at him. Emily lowered her eyes. The junior associate holding Richard's coffee went completely still. Richard could have stopped. He could have heard himself. Instead, he continued. You should be grateful we let you inside buildings like this. But gratitude seems impossible when everyone has been taught to see themselves as a victim. A reporter lifted her phone higher. Marcus looked directly at Richard. For several seconds, neither man spoke. Marcus's face did not twist with rage. His voice did not shake. That calm seemed to disturb Richard more than anger would have. You think the building proves you belong here, Marcus said quietly. I think what you do when nobody can stop you proves who you are. Richard's cheeks darkened. Remove him. 2 guards approached. Marcus picked up his folder. He did not fight them. He did not insult Richard. He did not appeal to the crowd. As he passed the digital rendering of Riverside Renewal, the screen changed to a slogan in gold letters. A better future for everyone. Marcus stopped for half a second. Then he walked into the rain. The cold hit him immediately. Water darkened his jacket and ran over his face. Behind him, the lobby doors closed with a muted mechanical sigh. Across the street, Marcus stood beneath the narrow cover of a bus shelter. Cars hissed over wet pavement. The folder pressed against his chest beneath his jacket. His phone vibrated. It was his mother. He answered. Hey, Ma. Did they listen? Marcus looked back at the tower. Through the glass, he could see people moving beneath the chandelier, small and polished and dry. Not yet, he said. Lorraine was silent for a moment. You all right? I'm fine. You don't sound fine. Marcus rubbed rainwater from his eyes. They treated me like I didn't know what I was talking about. You do know. That wasn't enough. It usually isn't the first time. A bus passed without stopping, spraying water along the curb. Marcus closed his eyes. His mother's voice softened. Your father used to say dignity is what you keep when somebody tries to price it for you. Marcus smiled faintly. Dad said a lot of things. He was right about that one. I know. You coming home? Soon. Mrs. Brooks' oxygen machine is making that noise again. I'll look at it. You always do. Marcus glanced down at the folder. I'll see you in a little while. He ended the call and stood alone beneath the shelter, while thunder rolled somewhere beyond the buildings. Then a woman approached him. She wore a tan coat and carried a phone in one hand. "Mr. Reed." Marcus turned cautiously. "My name is Julia Chun. I'm with Channel 8. I'm not giving an interview. I recorded what happened." Marcus looked at her phone. "Delete it." Julia blinked. "Why?" "Because this isn't about me being insulted. It shows who Richard Whitmore is." "No. It shows 43 seconds of who he was today. He humiliated you. And if the story becomes only about what he said, 400 people still lose their homes." Julia studied him. Rain tapped against the plastic roof above them. "What is the real story?" she asked. Marcus looked at the folder. "Forged waivers. Illegal evictions. Maybe more. Can you prove it?" "I can prove enough to make someone investigate." Julia lowered the phone. "Then show me." Marcus did not answer immediately. He thought of the tenants. Some feared publicity. Some were undocumented. Others depended on housing assistance and worried that speaking publicly might bring retaliation. "You cannot use their names without permission," he said. "Agreed." "You cannot publish medical information." "Agreed." "And you do not release anything until I speak to an attorney." Julia nodded. Marcus watched her face, searching for ambition disguised as concern. "What made you follow me?" he asked. Julia glanced toward the tower. "My father owned a grocery store when I was a child. A developer forced him out using a contract he couldn't read well. Everyone told him it was legal because men in suits said it was legal. And was it? No, what happened? He lost the store before anyone cared enough to prove it." Marcus looked down the street as another bus approached. This one slowed. He stepped toward the curb, then stopped. "Come to Halston Avenue at 6, he said. "Talk to the people. Not just me." That evening, the basement of Building 7 filled with tenants. The room smelled of old concrete, laundry soap, and coffee. Pipes crossed the low ceiling. Folding chairs stood in uneven rows. Children sat on their parents' laps while rain rattled against the narrow ground-level windows. Marcus stood near a workbench beneath a fluorescent light that flickered every few minutes. Beside him sat a legal aid attorney named Nia Campbell, a black woman in her late 30s with close-cropped hair and a red notebook open across her knees. Marcus had called her after leaving the tower. She had canceled dinner and arrived. Within an hour, Julia stood near the back without a camera crew. Lorraine sat in the front row, both hands wrapped around a paper cup. Marcus held up the waiver carrying her signature. "How many of you remember signing this document?" No hands rose. "How many attended a tenant rights meeting in January?" The room remained still. An older man spoke from the second row. "They told us there was a meeting, but when we arrived, the office was locked." A woman holding a baby nodded. "Then they said it had been rescheduled." "Did anyone receive another date?" Nia asked. No one had. Mrs. Brooks lifted a trembling hand. "My notice says I refused relocation assistance." "Did you?" Marcus asked. "I didn't even know they offered it." A murmur moved through the basement. Nia examined the documents one by one. "The waivers are notarized by the same person," she said. "Is that important?" Lorraine asked. "It can be." Marcus handed her a maintenance schedule. The notary claims the forms were signed in the property office on February 10th. Nia checked the page. Marcus pointed to a line. "The office was closed that week because a pipe burst. I changed the locks myself. Nobody entered without calling me." "Do you have access records?" "Electronic key logs." "Where?" "On the building server." "Can management alter them?" "Yes." "Can you make a copy?" "I already did." Nia looked up at him. For the first time that day, someone looked at Marcus not as a worker who had wandered beyond his place, but as a man whose knowledge mattered. "Good," she said. "Very good." Over the next 2 hours, the story widened. The property company, Lakefront Urban Partners, had purchased the Halston buildings through several shell corporations. The tenants' waivers allowed the company to avoid millions of dollars in relocation expenses required under city redevelopment rules. Whitmore and Cole had prepared the acquisition contracts. Richard Whitmore had personally signed the legal compliance certification. Nia closed the folder. "This is enough to request an emergency injunction." "Can we stop the evictions?" someone asked. "Temporarily, maybe." "Maybe," Lorraine repeated. "I won't lie to you," Nia said. "Companies like this have teams of attorneys. They delay, deny, and bury people in procedure. But forged documents change things." Julia spoke from the back. "So does public pressure." Marcus looked at her. "No tenants on camera without consent." "I understand." A young father named David Alvarez stood. "I'll go on camera." His wife looked at him anxiously. David held up the notice. "My sons keep asking where we're moving. I don't know what to tell them. If they want my face, they can have it." Mrs. Brooks raised her hand. "Mine too." Soon others agreed. Not everyone, but enough. Marcus looked around the basement. Fear was still there, but it had changed shape. It was no longer silent. At 10:17 that night, Julia's station aired the first report. She did not show the lobby video. Instead, she showed Lorraine's hands. The camera stayed close as Lorraine tried to hold a pen. Her fingers bent painfully. The pen slipped and rolled across the table. Then the screen displayed the elegant signature on the waiver. The difference required no explanation. David Alvarez described receiving 3 days' notice to leave the apartment where his sons had been born. Mrs. Brooks stood beside her oxygen machine and asked where she was supposed to plug it in if she had no home. Nia explained the relocation law. Marcus appeared only briefly. "What do you want from Whitmore and Cole?" Julia asked him. "I want them to stop the evictions and investigate the documents." "Do you want Richard Whitmore to apologize?" Marcus looked into the camera. "An apology won't keep anyone warm at night." The report ended with a shot of the Riverside rendering glowing across the Whitmore and Cole lobby. A better future for everyone. Within minutes, calls began reaching the firm. Richard watched the report from his penthouse study. The room was lined with dark wood shelves and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Rain blurred the lights below. A glass of whiskey sat untouched beside his laptop. His wife, Catherine, stood near the doorway. "I saw the other video," she said. Richard did not turn. "What other video?" "The one from the lobby." His phone vibrated again. He silenced it. "Someone recorded you. They recorded part of an altercation. You said, 'You people.' He was trespassing." "That is not what I asked." Richard closed the laptop. He was creating a scene before the announcement. "And you made it worse." "You weren't there." "No. Millions of people will be." Richard stood. "The firm will issue a statement. We'll clarify the context." Catherine's face tightened. "What context makes those words better?" Richard picked up his drink, but did not taste it. He refused to leave. "So you forgot he was human?" Richard looked at her sharply. "That's dramatic." "No," Catherine said. "What you did was dramatic. I'm only describing it." She left him alone in the study. At 8 the next morning, the lobby video was released. The clip began with Marcus saying, "I brought you evidence." It ended with Richard declaring that people like Marcus should be grateful to enter buildings like his. By 9, Richard's name was trending nationwide. By 10, protesters stood outside the tower. By 11, the mayor's office announced a review of the Riverside project. Richard entered the emergency board meeting through a private garage. The conference room on the 46th floor overlooked a gray lake. 12 board members sat around the table. Some avoided his eyes. Others did not bother hiding their anger. At the center sat Eleanor Price, chairwoman of the firm. She was 71, thin, precise, and rarely emotional. "Tell us the video is misleading," she said. "It is incomplete." "Did you say those words?" "Yes, but then it is not misleading." Richard placed both hands on the table. The man was unauthorized, disruptive, and in possession of confidential documents. "Documents that may reveal fraud," said another board member. "We don't know that. We should have known before certifying compliance." "The property company assured us." Eleanor struck the table once with her palm. "We are not paid to be assured. We are paid to verify." Richard looked around. "I built this redevelopment division. And that is why your signature appears on every major filing. My signature appears because I trusted the compliance team. Your public reputation rests on telling clients never to sign what they haven't examined." Richard said nothing. The irony sat between them like another person. Eleanor slid a document across the table. Lakefront Urban Partners transferred $8 million to a consulting company called North Vale Strategies 2 weeks after the waivers were notarized. "I'm not familiar with it." "You should be." North Vale is owned by Daniel Whitmore. Richard froze. Daniel was his younger brother. For years, Daniel had drifted through business ventures, failed investments, and expensive promises. Richard had helped him quietly, paid debts, introduced clients, and once arranged a consulting position at Lakefront Urban Partners. "I had no knowledge of that payment," Richard said. "Can you prove it?" Richard stared at the paper. His phone began vibrating against the table. No one moved. Eleanor continued. The city has suspended project approval. 2 banking clients have placed us under review. The Federal Housing Office has requested records. Effective immediately, you are on administrative leave. Richard looked up. You cannot be serious. I have never been more serious. This firm carries my name. So does the scandal. Security did not escort Richard from the building. That would have been too public. Instead, he took the private elevator alone. When the doors opened in the lobby, the chandelier still glowed above the marble. The protesters outside were visible through the glass. Richard walked toward the side exit. Then he noticed something on the security desk. Marcus's visitor badge. Temporary access, it read. The badge had expired. Richard stared at it for several seconds before continuing outside. Cameras turned toward him. Questions struck from every direction. Mr. Whitmore, did you know the signatures were forged? Did your brother receive payments? Are you resigning? Do you regret your comments? Richard lowered his head and entered a waiting car. For the first time in 30 years, the city passed beyond the window without appearing to belong to him. At Halston Avenue, Marcus was repairing Mrs. Brooks' oxygen outlet when Nia called. The judge granted the temporary injunction. Marcus lowered his screwdriver. For how long? 30 days. No evictions, no utility shutoffs, no demolition. Mrs. Brooks watched his face. Is it good? She asked. Marcus smiled. It's good. She covered her mouth. In the hallway, Lorraine heard and began calling neighbors. Doors opened. Voices rose. Someone cried. David Alvarez lifted both sons into his arms. Marcus remained beside the outlet. He tightened the final screw, replaced the cover, and tested the current. The green light on the oxygen machine stopped flickering. Mrs. Brooks touched his shoulder. You saved us. Marcus shook his head. We bought time. Sometimes time is what saves you. That afternoon, investigators arrived at Lakefront Urban Partners. By evening, the company's chief financial officer had agreed to cooperate. The evidence came quickly after that. Emails showed that senior executives had ordered employees to create false tenant meeting records. Payments had been made to notaries, consultants, and local intermediaries. Daniel Whitmore had received millions for helping accelerate legal approval. One email included a message from Richard. Keep the relocation issue from delaying closing. I don't want details. I want results. Richard had written it 6 months earlier. He had not ordered forgery. He had not known about the dead tenant's signatures. But he had built a system where not knowing was rewarded. He had told subordinates that results mattered more than details, then treated ignorance as innocence when the details became crimes. 2 days after the board suspended him, Richard sat alone in his home. His phone had stopped ringing. That silence frightened him more than the calls. Catherine had gone to stay with their daughter. The firm had removed his biography from its website. A university canceled his commencement speech. A charity board requested his resignation. Former colleagues issued statements expressing disappointment. On television, commentators replayed the lobby clip. Richard turned off the screen. In the quiet, he heard rainwater dripping from the terrace. He walked into his study and opened the Riverside Project file. For the first time, he read every tenant report. Not summaries, not executive memos. Every page. He saw ages, disabilities, incomes, medical conditions, school distances, and family histories. He saw people reduced to rows and spreadsheets beneath headings such as relocation burden and removal schedule. Then he found Lorraine Reed's name. Age 69. Widowed. Former public school cafeteria worker. Mobility limitations. 26 years at current residence. Emergency contact. Marcus Reed, son. Richard leaned back. He remembered Marcus saying, "My mother did not sign this." He remembered refusing to touch the paper. Near midnight, Richard drove to Halston Avenue. He did not bring an assistant. He did not tell the press. The storm had passed, leaving the streets wet and shining beneath orange lamps. The buildings looked older than they had in photographs. Brick walls carried water stains. Fire escapes clung to the sides like black ribs. Richard parked across from Building 7. Through a basement window, he saw Marcus stacking folding chairs after another tenant meeting. Richard entered through the unlocked outer door. The hallway smelled of cooked onions, old paint, and radiator heat. Marcus came up the basement steps carrying a box of documents. He stopped when he saw Richard. Neither man spoke. Richard's expensive coat seemed out of place beneath the buzzing hallway light. "I came to talk," he said. Marcus adjusted the box in his arms. The legal aid office opens at 8. I didn't come as an attorney. Then why are you here? Richard looked toward the apartment doors. I read the files. Marcus waited. All of them, Richard added. That must have been difficult. The words were not sarcastic. That made them harder to hear. Richard looked down. I didn't know about the forged forms. Marcus's face remained still. But you knew people would be removed. I believed they would receive assistance. Did you check? No, did you ask? No, then what did you believe in? Richard opened his mouth, but found no answer. A radiator knocked behind the wall. From upstairs came the sound of a child laughing. Richard drew a slow breath. I told myself I was responsible for the transaction, not every consequence. That's a convenient line. Yes. Marcus shifted the box again. Richard stepped forward. I also came to apologize. To me, to you, to your mother, to everyone here. Marcus looked at him for a long moment. You want forgiveness? I don't know. Then what do you want? Richard's voice lowered. I want to do something that isn't about protecting myself. Marcus glanced at the stairwell. You had that chance in your lobby. I know. You had another chance when the reporter called your firm. I know. You had lawyers, investigators, assistants, and an entire compliance department. I had a folder. I know. Marcus's eyes hardened for the first time. No, you know now. That's different. Richard absorbed the words. Marcus continued. You know because your clients left. Because your board removed you. Because your name became expensive. You didn't discover our humanity. You discovered consequences. Richard's face tightened, but he did not defend himself. You're right, he said. The answer surprised Marcus. Richard looked older beneath the fluorescent light. Not weaker. Simply stripped of the distance that power had once placed between him and everyone else. I spent my life believing I earned every room I entered, Richard said. When you walked into my building, I thought your clothing, your job, and your lack of an appointment meant you had not earned the right to challenge me. Marcus said nothing. I was wrong. Yes. I cannot undo what I said. No, I cannot repair your trust with an apology. No, Richard nodded slowly. What can I do? Marcus looked toward the box in his hands. Testify. Richard's eyes lifted. Tell investigators what you knew. Give them your emails. Explain how the firm handled complaints. Don't hide behind privilege. Don't blame your brother for everything. That could expose me to prosecution. Yes. It could permanently end my career. Marcus held his gaze. You came here asking what you could do. Richard looked down the hallway. For decades, his career had been the structure around which he built his identity. Without it, he did not know who remained. Then the door to apartment 1A opened. A little boy stepped into the hallway carrying a red toy truck. He looked at Richard curiously, then at Marcus. Mr. Marcus, my bedroom light is blinking again. I'll come up in a minute, Jamal. The boy nodded and returned inside. Richard watched the door close. You take care of this entire building? He asked. I take care of what I can. Even now. Especially now. Richard looked at the box, the worn stairs, the patched walls, and the man he had ordered removed from his lobby. If I testify, Richard said, the firm may collapse. Marcus's expression softened slightly. Buildings aren't the only things worth saving. The following morning, Richard Whitmore entered the federal housing office carrying 2 boxes of records. Reporters waited outside. This time he stopped. Microphones rose toward him. Mr. Whitmore, are you cooperating with the investigation? Yes. Did your firm know tenant rights were being violated? Richard looked directly into the cameras. My firm created a culture where speed and profit mattered more than asking who would be harmed. I helped create that culture. Did you personally authorize forged documents? No. But I ignored warnings, discouraged scrutiny, and signed certifications I had not adequately verified. Are you blaming your brother? No. Do you expect criminal charges? I will accept whatever lawful consequences follow. A reporter shouted from the side. Why are you admitting this now? Richard paused. 3 days earlier, he would have shaped the answer carefully. He would have considered optics, liability, and public reaction. Now he simply told the truth. Because a man I treated as if he were beneath me understood responsibility better than I did. The statement played across every major network. Some called it courageous. Others called it too late. Marcus called it necessary. Over the following weeks, the Riverside case transformed. Lakefront Urban Partners executives were charged with fraud, conspiracy, and falsification of housing records. Daniel Whitmore was indicted for arranging illegal payments. Several city employees resigned after investigators found that inspection reports had been altered. Whitmore and Cole lost clients, partners, and much of its value. The board removed Richard permanently and created an independent civil rights compliance office funded by the sale of executive assets. Richard surrendered his law license before disciplinary proceedings could begin. His reputation did not recover. Some consequences were not meant to disappear. But the tenants of Halston Avenue received full relocation protections. The redevelopment plan was rewritten. 2 buildings were preserved as affordable housing. Families who chose to move received compensation, legal support, and 12 months of rent assistance. Lorraine chose to stay. "I finally got the tomatoes growing right," she told Marcus. "I'm not starting over now." Marcus laughed. Months later, the city offered him a position as a housing compliance inspector. The interviewer praised his attention to detail, his knowledge of building systems, and his role in exposing the fraud. Marcus accepted only after confirming that the job would allow him to inspect properties in the neighborhoods officials usually ignored. On his final evening as maintenance supervisor, he walked through Building 7 checking locks, smoke detectors, outlets, and boiler pressure. The work was ordinary. That was why he loved it. Ordinary things kept people alive. A secure railing, a working heater, a door that locked, a light that came on when a child was afraid. Near sunset, Marcus climbed to the roof. The sky above Chicago had turned pale gold. Water towers and chimneys stood in dark silhouettes. Far downtown, the glass tower that once carried Richard Whitmore's name reflected the fading light. Lorraine joined Marcus slowly, carrying 2 cups of tea. "You fixed Mrs. Brooks' outlet?" she asked. "Months ago. She still tells everybody you saved her." "The electrician saved her." "You are the electrician." "Not after tomorrow." Lorraine handed him a cup. "You nervous?" "A little." "Good." "Why good?" "Means you understand the job matters." They stood beside the roof's brick edge. Below them, children drew with chalk on the sidewalk. Someone played music through an open window. A train moved in the distance, its sound low and metallic. Marcus's phone vibrated. A message appeared from an unfamiliar number. It was a photograph. Richard Whitmore stood inside a small community legal clinic wearing a plain white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He was seated at a folding table, sorting housing forms beneath fluorescent lights. The message beneath the image came from Nia. "He volunteers twice a week." No cameras. No speeches. Marcus looked at the photograph for a moment. Lorraine leaned closer. "That him?" "Yes." "You going to answer?" Marcus considered it. Then he typed 4 words. "Tell him to keep showing up." He put the phone away. Across the city, Richard sat alone after the clinic closed. The room was small. The carpet was worn. A desk lamp cast a circle of warm light over a stack of tenant applications. Months earlier, he would have considered the work beneath him. Now he read every line. At the bottom of one form, an elderly tenant had forgotten to sign her name. Richard placed a yellow note beside the empty space rather than rejecting the application. He turned off the lamp, gathered his coat, and walked toward the exit. Before leaving, he noticed a maintenance worker repairing the lock on the clinic door. Richard stopped. "Do you need me to hold the light?" he asked. The worker glanced at him, surprised. Then he handed Richard a flashlight. Outside, evening settled over the city. The towers downtown still shone above the river, but their light no longer seemed permanent. It moved across the water, trembling whenever the wind disturbed the surface. On the roof of Building 7, Marcus stood beside his mother until the last gold disappeared from the sky. Neither of them spoke. Below, one apartment window lit up, then another, and in the gathering darkness, the old building remained standing. Not because powerful men had decided it deserved to survive, but because one man they had refused to see had carried the truth through their doors and refused to put it down.